Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's The World This Week in partnership with the Daily Beast. Foreign editor Christopher Dickey is with us. So is Anne-Elisabeth Moutet, columnist for The Daily and The Sunday Telegraph. Nupur Tewari, Europe editor for NDTV Television. Welcome back. Welcome back as well to Pierre Aski, journalist, your latest book, The Right to Happiness, France and the Challenges of Globalization. A neat look at both how things play out domestically and abroad when it comes to the issues that matter in this election. Now, Sunday's the vote for the first round of the presidential election. There'll be a second round, a runoff on May the 8th. This Friday is a special date. It marks the 15th anniversary of a day the French remember well. April the 21st, 2002, the far-right's Jean-Marie Le Pen squeaks into the runoff of the presidential election race with less than 17% of the vote. The reason? A splintering of left-wing votes. Everyone had assumed that socialist Lionel Jospin would be the runoff candidate. And, of course, it didn't turn out that way. And Pierre Aski, the people on the left in this country are haunted when you say April 21st. They know what that means. Yes. In the case of this vote, is there still an impact from what happened 15 years ago?
Well, it's a very different scenario this time. You know, in 2002, the surprise was that the National Front candidate Le Pen was in the second round. This year, the surprise would be if Marine Le Pen was not in the second round, because she's been on the top of the polls for so long. She won the intermediate elections, regional, local elections in the previous years, and it seemed until recently that everything was in her favor. You know, Brexit, Trump, the fall of Fillon with his scandal, riots in the suburbs, everything was playing into her hands. And all of a sudden, things have gone wrong in her campaign. I think, and she radicalized her speech in the last phase.
Why is that?
As if there was tension within her rank and she had to sacrifice maybe the prospect of rebranding, as she had been doing in the previous years, in favor of keeping the cohesion of her movement, which is split between different factions. And so it's not so sure. Maybe the attack on the Champs-Elysées will change that, but it's not so sure that she is so in such a good shape in this election, contrary to all expectation, particularly internationally, when people had felt that there was a kind of domino effect that after Trump, Marine Le Pen would be the next one. I don't think she can win. Maybe I'll eat my words in a few days, but and I'm not even sure she can be on the second round.
I think another difference from the time when Jean-Marie Le Pen won and this year would be that there are a lot of young people. You know, I went to some of her rallies and meetings. It wasn't a very pleasant experience for me because I was really looked at as somebody from, as an outsider, which I am. But, when you're in the Front National camp, it's a little daunting to be there. But I saw a lot of young people. There were tons of young people who back Marine Le Pen. And I think that is because many of these people don't really know Jean-Marie Le Pen, nor are they really aware of the legacy of the Front National. So, for them, this is easy rhetoric to comprehend and adopt. And they are so far removed from the history of fascism and whatever else it might be, that they are actually willing to back Marine Le Pen. And this is something that perhaps kind of like it's disjointed from the history of the party, from this old image of the far-right, racist, xenophobe Le Pen. So while she might have tried to tone things down on the way, now perhaps she doesn't need to, because there's this kind of dissociation, at least in the minds of the young voters, where they're willing to accept her as she is, even if bordering further on the far right than she would have if she toned down her discourse.
All right, so questions of whether or not she'll win, whether or not she'll be in the second round. Let's just show our viewers here the latest polls, and they show that it is essentially a four-way race. You have as you see over the past couple of months, this surge by the far left, Jean-Luc Melenchon, sometimes polling even with the man who had been the front runner at the outset, that is to say, François Fillon, the conservative candidate. So the four-way race between Marine Le Pen, the centrist Emmanuel Macron, Jean-Luc Melenchon, and François Fillon with the socialists is the bottom there, Benoît Hamon, who's faded badly. So let's just show you a little bit how it works here. So I got this in the mail. This is the packet that all voters get. I'll open it up here. I haven't opened mine.
Paper ballots, no hanging chads.
I know, no hanging chads here. So we have here the flyers. We have of course the ballot papers, so you can prepare your little ballot before you go and vote. Christopher Dickey, your thoughts first of all on the way the French vote, on this way of voting.
I think it's good. I think all of us now would prefer to see paper ballots and something that can't be hacked. Now, of course, once they start to tally those ballots, that might be subject to some kind of cyber espionage, but I think that's quite good. I also like it that the campaign is relatively short and there's relatively little money involved compared to the United States. You don't feel that anybody here is buying the whole campaign, which is you do feel so often in the United States.
All right, let's hear. I'm going to pass these around. Piaski, take these.
Oh, no, I don't want this.
Pass a few of them here. Split them up a little bit between amongst each other. Take it, because here's the thing. There's 11 candidates. Anne-Elisabeth, there's 11 candidates, and we've mentioned the big ones.
I don't want it, in fact.
So, explain to us, because here's the thing. Can I say part of the fun is discovering these small candidates. Some of them are complete unknowns to the
Considering what is
fringe of fringes.
What might happen on the 7th of May, Jacques Cheminade, the man who wants to colonize Mars, may have a point, actually. So, I'm on that rocket.
What's the one you have there?
So I've got Nathalie Arthaud. Nathalie Arthaud is basically, she is, I don't know whether the camera can catch it. Nathalie Arthaud, we know who she is because she represents one of the unreconstructed Trotskyite movements, Lutte Ouvrière, and they haven't changed since the aftermath of May 68. And they have those earnest, serious, short-haired women running. You had Arlette Laguillet, who was a bank employee, a very respectable woman, who polled 2%, but was loved by people because they felt she was honest.
And when you write for the British press, do you explain to them that there's not one but two Trotskyite candidates?
3 Trotskyite candidates.
3 if you count Jean-Luc Melenchon, who was a Trotskyist, and once you are a Trotskyist, you're always a
Trotskyist.
Unlike a Maoist, right?
Plus a Communist Party somewhere. No, we have a wonderful time with a number of Marxists who remain in France. I've always said that all of the problems of France exist because France is a country that has not forgotten either Catholicism or Marxism, and together it's a very dangerous combination.
All right, the one that you have there in front of you, Nupur, who's that?
I have Nicolas Dupont-Aignan. He talks a lot about tax evasion, and I like that, but everything else about him is practically Marine Le Pen. That's how I describe him. So he's
tax evasion. He's against it, I take it.
He's against tax evasion. He supports a lot of whistleblowers. He once, for one of the regional elections, he actually invited Stéphanie Gibault, who's the UBS whistleblower, to run, and he backs them a lot, and which I think is another sort of populist, agenda on the program, which works well these days because people are beginning to realize that, finance is the real enemy. So you have many who would say that except Macron.
One of a great number of Eurosceptic candidates on the ballot. There's more Eurosceptics than Trotskyites. Who have you got there in front of you?
I've got the best.
Oh, I love him.
Jean Lassalle is an amazing character. He's the mayor of a very small place in the Pyrenees, and he speaks with this chanting accent from the Pyrenees. And he's very tall. He's like a rugby player. And he starts singing very quickly because he's that's the culture from the mountain villages of the Pyrenees. And he has this down-to-earth program that we just need to rule the country the way I rule my village. Which
how many votes will he get? What will be his score on Sunday?
If he gets to 1%, he's lucky because people have respect. I'm not sure respect is the right word, but at least some tenderness for him, because he's you know, nothing wrong can come with him. You know, he's not like one of the others who have a dark side and so on. I could go on holiday with him in keeping the sheep without any problem.
Right. Isn't he the son of a shepherd, brother of a shepherd?
Yes, yes. And so if he gets 1%, he's really going to be happy. But he claims on every TV program he's been in the past few days that he's going to be on the second round, and that.
Well, what's he going to say?
The April surprise.
Yeah.
All right, the April surprise, there's going to be, of course, 2 rounds again. There's going to be this coming Sunday, April 23rd, second round, May 7th. Then there'll be the legislative elections. Now, by the way, the French won't be alone when they're voting in June.
Oh, God, yes.
Westminster will risk our ability to make a success of Brexit, and it will cause damaging uncertainty and instability to the country. So we need a general election, and we need one now.
All right, Anne-Elisabeth Moutet, when Theresa May pulled that surprise out of her hat of the June 8th snap election in Britain, people here in France, it really hit home how much Brexit negotiations are going to be a big deal for the next French president, and what the role of France is going to be inside of the EU once the British leave.
And whether, you know, you have the pull of Brexit, because so far many of the candidates have said, well, a couple of candidates have said, why don't we do Frexit? Look at the British. Brexit is not harming them in any way. And of course, Brexit has not started. So there's no way of telling whether except that the pound has gone down 20%, which in itself is a bit ominous.
What did you think of Emmanuel Macron at a rally in Nantes this week, waving a European flag, which is something you don't really see normally at a French political
That is
rally?
brave. And at the same time, it's part of the image of somebody who says, look, I am different from the others for all sorts of reasons, but at least I will stick to my guns in those things I believe in. That's very unpopular. So in some ways, that's quite admirable, because it's he's been described as somebody who tries to please everyone. He tells everyone what they believe. And there are other things in which I think he really does just say whatever happens to please the people he talks to, but not on Europe. He's been extremely steadfast on Europe. So, you know, that's impressive. He does this in Western France. Western France is the place that has fewer Eurosceptics, fewer Front National voters. I mean, he still knew where he was when he was doing that.
All right. By the way, we were talking about Marine Le Pen. She has friends in Moscow, but she also has friends rooting for her in Washington. Correspondent Philip Crowther spoke with Republican Congressman Steve King of Iowa.
As a duly elected president of France, I expect that very soon after that, President Trump will want to meet with Marine Le Pen, and I will predict they will become fast friends because they are birds of a feather.
Christopher Dickey, your thoughts on Stephen King's prediction there?
Well, you know, I'm not sure that Marine Le Pen really wants to be branded that way. I mean, she says nice things about Trump every so often, but, well, we were at the same press conference with her when she was given all kinds of chances to say lots of nice things about Trump, and she didn't really. She loves to say nice things about Vladimir Putin. She thinks he's just swell. But I think she's always understood that Trump would be a problem for her, not least because she's been at this a long time. She is a really good politician. She knows exactly what she's doing, and she is a real ideologue as well. Trump is an amateur. He's completely unpredictable. He's not at all ideological. It isn't clear he has any principles at all. And that's not good for her. Also, he's been screwing up a lot in his first 100 days. And it doesn't exactly sit well. It's not like she can say, look at the great job Trump has done.
Not only that, but
she's borrowing.
She's expressed disappointment.
Well, she was very disappointed in the Syria raid. Exactly. But that's because, but you know But you know who was in the White House who was disappointed with that too is Steve Bannon.
Of course.
She isn't really a disciple.
He's her biggest fan in Washington.
She isn't really a disciple of Trump. She's a disciple of Steve Bannon.
But she has borrowed the idea from Trump that she's going to sign decrees and that she's going to fulfill 10 of her electoral promises within 2 months. And that was what Trump was doing the day of the inauguration.
Which she hasn't been able to do.
There's somebody we haven't mentioned much at this table, which is the far-left leader, Jean-Luc Melenchon, the one who sort of stole the thunder of the more mainstream socialist candidate, Benoît Hamon. He's one of the ones who did not suspend their campaign after Thursday's attacks. He was holding a what he called a cocktail hour rally with the head of the insurgent Spanish party, Podemos, this Friday, just hours before the campaign closes. He's been the big surprise of this campaign so far. What have you made of this, Nuportuari?
Also, François, you mentioned that he didn't suspend his campaign, but when he spoke also in those 15 minutes, he didn't make reference to the terror attacks or his security policy or anything like that. In fact, the interesting thing that comes to mind is that in this political campaign, practically every candidate has tried to project himself or herself as anti-establishment. From even Macron.
Even Macron. Yeah.
Even Macron.
So, if a former banker, EU supporter,
former deputy chief of staff of the Élysée,
exactly, is anti-establishment, then in this whole bunch of people, in these 11 candidates, if you were to actually think of one person who's probably really a little bit anti-establishment in the real sense of the word, I think it would be Jean-Luc Mélenchon.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
Which is not to say that
he's been a politician for 35 years.
Which is not to say that he is not part of the establishment. But I'm saying, by comparison, if you look at the top candidates, if you look at the 4 top candidates, I would think that he would be the most anti-establishment, despite the fact that he's been a politician for the longest time.
Cabinet minister,
a lot of people talk about how he's
the
very
richest of the candidates.
Yeah, and he's a Freemason.
And how he's actually very authoritarian, etc. I mean, all that. But if you look at his program, I think talking about the fact that he's going to make the presidential monarchy in France weak is perhaps the most radical thing that any of
Despite being a monarch himself in his own party.
Exactly. Yeah. But of course, we cannot rule out hypocrisy. They're all politicians after all.
I get the impression Pierre's not a fan of Mélenchon.
Yeah, I'm getting that as well.
Takes one to know one.
I think Mélenchon has already reached his goal. I don't think his goal was to win this election. He knows he can't, and he won't. But his goal was to be ahead of the Socialist Party candidate. He's crashed the Socialist Party, and that's his historical revenge. He left the Socialist Party 10 years ago because he felt humiliated by that party, and he was offering
Secretary François Hollande.
He was offering a more radical approach. He did a little bit like Oscar Lafontaine in Germany, who created Die Linke. But Die Linke has never been able to overtake the Social Democrats. This time, he holds his revenge because the Socialist Party is dead and he is the star of the campaign.
Also, remember how he reacted to Benoît Hamon initially, when Hamon suggested that they join hands. Mélenchon was furious,
Well, he said, you can join me, behind me.
Very quickly before we finish, what interests viewers in India about this election?
Marine Le Pen. Just like Trump, I think it's the fear factor. It's really like that adrenaline that people want to buy into, I think. But it's not so funny when it comes to people like me.
Chris Verdicki, for U.S. viewers, for U.S. readers.
I've written, lots of people have written recently that this is essentially, if Marine Le Pen becomes president, God forbid, it's the beginning of the end of Europe. It's not just Brexit, it's Frexit. Or Mélenchon, for that matter. It's all this talk about let's have referendums, let's have more direct democracy. Those, in fact, are the tools of tyrants.
And for readers in the UK, is it all about Le Pen as well?
It's about Frexit. It certainly is about Brexit and the validation of Brexit by the French following suit. So that would be a very important thing. But there's more knowledge in Britain of what's going on in France than there is in America, where they really do not know how it works. No. So you have a combination of what's going to happen to them, with the tabloids very much sort of saying President Le Pen is coming upon us, and the rest being very sophisticated on what's going on.
I think Europe is watching this election with anxiety, because the key, the key is here. I mean, if you have one of the many anti-European candidates who wins, it's the end of the Europe as we've known it for the past 6 decades. So, so the stakes are very, very high.
Well, it's also a threat to NATO. It's it's the end of the world as we know it. Actually,
but Bolivarian alliance, we
back to the references to Jean-Luc Melenchon. Elisabeth Boutet, Pierre Aski, and Nupur Tiwari, Christopher Dickey, many thanks. Stay with us, because Media Watch is next. Say hello to Emma James. We were saying it at the outset, Emma, that the outgoing socialist prime minister accusing, and he named Marine Le Pen, accusing Marine Le Pen of politicizing Thursday's attack on the Champs-Elysées.
And François Fillon too. And what is incredible about this terror attack is that it's made what was already so unpredictable even harder to predict. The Economist's front page, which of course was created before that terror attack happened, has zut alors, the favoured phrase of French teachers in the United Kingdom, which nobody ever says in France.
Not for about 150 years.
It's so old-fashioned.
Absolutely.
But Italians do say mamma mia, though.
Okay.
And the French do say oh la la.
Yes, but not in the way the Anglo-Saxons say it. The Anglo-Saxons say ooh la la, which is supposed to be sort of exciting, like French encore, and the French say oh la la, and it's a washout.
I've opened a whole can of worms here. But anyway, The Economist refers to this as France's dangerous election because it is so hard to predict. And it is interesting when you start to see some really strong words coming out from the Prime Minister, Bernard Cazeneuve, who has made big accusations against not just Marine Le Pen, but also François Fillon, saying they've chosen exaggeration and division in the wake of this terror attack. Now, he's criticised in particular Marine Le Pen, it has to be said, saying she's shamelessly exploiting fear and emotion for purely political ends. No great shock there, really, because what else do politicians do? François Fillon tweeted this: the fight against Islamic totalitarianism must be the main priority of the next president of the Republic. He also went on to say, we are at war, there is no alternative, it's us or them. And that starts to get very inflammatory. Marine Le Pen...
That expression of war was used by the socialist president, François.
But it's the us and them aspect to it that really starts to amplify those divisions that already exist in French society. Marine Le Pen says France must stop being naive and reinstate border checks. She went on something of a Twitter rant, really, today, or somebody did on her behalf. There was a whole slew of tweets talking about what she would do if she were in power, and it was all very much in response to the terror attack that we saw on the Champs-Elysées. She's called for new rules to restrict immigration, asylum, and people applying for citizenship, wanting to put more blocks there. And it culminated with this one, which raised a lot of eyebrows. I demand the immediate expulsion of the foreigners who are on the terror watch list, the Fiche S. Now, the reason that caused some consternation is because the guy who carried out the attack on the Champs-Elysées was French, he wasn't foreign, and he also wasn't on the terror watch list. Some people could argue that he should have been, because he was arrested just in January this year, supposedly plotting to kill police officers, and they were told that he was on the hunt for weapons. But, of course, it's feeding into this narrative that it is only foreigners, it is only people who are fiché S, and again, cementing those kind of divisions. Interestingly, Donald Trump had to wade in today. Another terrorist attack in Paris. The people of France will not take much more of this, will have a big effect on presidential election and then an exclamation point. A lot of people are seeing
yeah,
this.
what are we supposed to read into will have a big effect on presidential election? Is that an endorsement of one of the candidates?
I think only, yes, I don't think many people will read it as anything other than this could mean Marine Le Pen gets into the Elysée.
Especially because he's never heard of François Fillon.
Or Jean Lassalle.
One reaction that I saw to that tweet, which I particularly liked, I admire France's resilience and hope they avoid electing a leader as stupid as ours.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear.
As for Simon Rosenberg, he's some sort of frightfully intelligent person. There we go. Works for a think tank in Washington, D.C. As for who could be the big loser, well, a lot of people are talking about Emmanuel Macron because, of course, he's seen as this less experienced, very young candidate and who's softer on security than Marine Le Pen and, of course, François Fillon. He has hit back by saying the choice that we have to make is a choice for the future. Do not surrender to fear. You could translate that as please don't desert me now. But if we take a look at the Spectator, they've written a blog today saying that his refusal to talk about Islamic extremism could cost him dearly because, of course, it is what is in the spotlight right now. They think he could be the big loser come Sunday in the wake of this attack. They describe him as supposedly brilliant and boyish, if slightly odd. And this writer believes that voters are cottoning on to the fact that he is François Hollande's mini-me, because, of course, he's done his best to draw all the sort of drawbridges up and say, no, I've got nothing to do with the current administration, but he did serve François Hollande. And, of course, François Hollande, so unpopular that he couldn't even stand for election. So it'll be interesting to see. Certainly the polls don't seem to be reflecting that he's in trouble. Paris Match's latest one has him actually gaining a little ground, 2 points ahead of Marine Le Pen, according to them. But who can trust the polls?
We will know what those polls are worth come Sunday at 8 p.m. Paris time. Of course, you'll be watching it here on France 24. I want to thank you, Emma James. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for being with us here in The World This Week.